Welcome to our examination of some of history's most compelling stories, where we lay out the complete factual account so you can understand exactly what happened and, well, why it matters.
Today, we're looking at one of the longest and I think one of the most turbulent careers in Hollywood history. We're talking about Mickey Rooney.
The numbers are they're staggering. His professional life spanned 88 years.
88 years, it's almost unbelievable.
It started in 1926, which is deep in the silent film era, and it ran all the way to his death in 2014.
So you're talking about an actor who saw the entire evolution of modern cinema. He appeared in over 300 films, earned 5 Academy Award nominations.
And across 4 separate decades. It's an incredible record of longevity.
So our mission today is to really assess the source material on this man's extraordinary life. We have to trace the arc from, when he was the world's top box office draw.
A period of just explosive fame.
Exactly. And then trace it down into the devastating decline, the constant professional reinventions, and the profound personal tragedy that really shadowed his final years.
We want to try and understand what drove that. How does a single performer sustain a career for nearly 9 decades? And I think crucially, what can his story tell us about the pressures of child stardom?
And about the price of survival in Hollywood. It's a story of genius, but also tragedy, and this relentless, almost stubborn endurance.
So let's unpack this career, starting right at the very beginning.
To really get it, you have to start with his birth. He wasn't born Mickey Rooney.
No, not at all. He was born Ninian Joseph Ewell Jr. in Brooklyn, New York, back in 1920.
And his parents were already deep in show business. His mother, Nellie Carter, was a former chorus girl, and his father, Joe Ewell Sr., was a Scottish-born vaudevillian.
So this wasn't a kid who, discovered the stage. He was literally born into it.
That's the perfect way to put it. The term child star almost doesn't do it justice. His career began before he could really talk.
At just 17 months old.
Yeah, 17 months. He was performing in his parents' routine, and they even had a little custom-tailored tuxedo for him.
So before he could even form full sentences, he was learning the rhythm and the timing of a vaudeville act.
Imagine that kind of exposure. It's all you've ever known.
But that life, that continuous performance, it was interrupted pretty sharply in 1924.
Right, his parents separated. And his mother took him and they moved across the country to Hollywood the next year.
And that move completely redirected his path. He went from the vaudeville circuit straight into the rapidly growing film industry.
He made his first film appearance when he was only 6 in a short from 1926 called Not to Be Trusted.
But the identity that really truly launched him was Mickey Maguire.
That's right. His mother saw an ad in a trade paper for a child actor to play this role, which was based on a popular comic strip, Toonerville Trolley.
And from the age of 7, starting in 1927 with Mickey's Circus, he starred in this hugely successful series of short films.
78 of them. He played that character until 1936. So for almost a decade of his childhood, he was Mickey Maguire.
But the name itself became a huge problem, a legal problem.
It did. The producers of the film series were sued for copyright infringement by the comic strip's owners, and they lost.
Which meant the young actor had to immediately stop using the name Mickey Maguire. He needed a new identity, and fast.
And the story of how he got his new name is it's one of those classic, bizarre Hollywood tales.
So his mother, according to the source material, she suggested Mickey Rooney.
Mickey Rooney. I mean, it sort of makes sense. He was already known as Mickey, but can you imagine a 90-year career under that name?
It's absurd to think about. Luckily, he was smart enough to change it just slightly.
He was worried about infringing on the Warner Bros. Animation series?
Looney Tunes, of course.
So he landed on Mickey Rooney, and that decision, which was forced on him by a lawsuit, gave him the name he would carry for the rest of his life.
And while he was grinding out those 78 shorts, he was also building experience, taking bit parts wherever he could.
The level of professional activity for a boy that young is just insane to think about. But his real breakout moment, the one that signaled his serious artistic potential, that came when he was just 14.
That was the 1935 Warner Bros. Film adaptation of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream.
A huge all-star production. And Rooney was cast as Puck.
And the critics, well, they were blown away.
Absolutely. This role was pivotal. It proved he wasn't just some kid comic. He had legitimate dramatic weight.
The critic David Thompson famously called his performance one of the cinema's most arresting pieces of magic.
Which is just extraordinary praise for a 14-year-old doing Shakespeare on screen. It showed this almost preternatural ability to play a role that's inhuman, that's fantastical.
And that success, that critical acclaim, it paved his way to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer.
To MGM, the studio that would really define his early stardom. And it was there that he formed that hugely important lifelong bond with Judy Garland.
And if the role of Puck was the artistic signal flare, then I think his role as Whitey Marsh in 1938's Boys Town was the mainstream dramatic punch.
Right. He was opposite Spencer Tracy, he was 17 years old, and Whitey Marsh is a tough, troubled kid. It was a gritty counterpoint to the funny persona he was building.
That dual ability was so key. He could be hysterically funny one moment and then intensely dramatic the next.
And that performance, combined with the rising success of the actress Deanna Durbin, it earned both of them a special Juvenile Academy Award in 1939.
And it wasn't just for one film. The award was for, and this is a quote, signifying the spirit and personification of youth on screen.
So Hollywood had officially anointed him. He was the symbol of American youth.
By the time he was 19, his trajectory was just a rocket ship. He was nominated for a Best Actor Oscar for Babes in Arms,
which made him the second youngest nominee ever in that category. This entire period just set the stage for the absolute apex of his fame, and it all came from one unexpected movie franchise.
That franchise, of course, being the Andy Hardy series. This is what transformed him from a successful child actor into, well, quite literally, the most famous movie star in the world.
And it's so important to remember that the Andy Hardy series didn't start with big ambitions.
Not at all. The first film, A Family Affair, from 1937, it was planned as just a simple, low-budget B-movie.
Rooney was cast as Andy Hardy, the son of a small-town judge, and the character was written as this relatable but kind of exasperating, anxious, hyperactive, girl-crazy teenager.
But the series just exploded. It became a cultural institution. 16 films in total between 1937 and 1946.
To understand why it became so massive, you have to look at the cultural context of the era.
Exactly. This is the late 1930s, early 1940s. You've got global conflict brewing, economic uncertainty after the Great Depression.
A lot of anxiety about the future. And the source material really emphasizes that the Andy Hardy films provided a comforting portrait of small-town America.
They were an escape. They offered this idealized stability. They showed an image of what every parent wished their teen could be like.
It was cinematic reassurance, this wholesome, functional family in a world that felt like it was spinning out of control.
And Rooney, he was the perfect vehicle for all that nostalgia and hope. He wasn't even the intended star of the first movie, but he just became this magnetic center of the whole series. He was the idealized American teen.
And the commercial success was just unprecedented. He was the biggest box office draw in the entire world for 3 years straight.
1939, 1940, and 1941. He was number one.
At the peak of this, he was one of the best-paid actors of the era. He was on the cover of Time magazine in 1940.
But this immense fame, it created this intense duality that would really plague him for decades.
Right. There was Rooney, the star MGM's perfect, amiable American boy who was churning out several films a year. And then there was Rooney the person, the turbulent young man behind the scenes.
You see evidence of this split everywhere. Between the ages of 15 and 25, he made 43 films for MGM.
43. The workload alone is staggering. It suggests a life completely devoid of a normal adolescence.
And his co-star, Wallace Beery, while he acknowledged his talent, he also famously described the young Rooney off-camera simply as a brat.
So the studio, and specifically the head of MGM, Louis B. Mayer, they had to manage this public versus private persona very, very carefully.
And that moment with Mayer, it's iconic. It really speaks volumes about the pressure these young stars were under. Mayer realized that Rooney's personal behavior was a direct threat to the national image he was supposed to embody.
Right. Mayer's confrontation, it wasn't about moral guidance. It was about corporate brand protection on a massive scale.
The story goes that Mayer physically grabbed the young actor by his lapels
and delivered this unforgettable lecture. He told him, "Listen to me. I don't care what you do in private. Just don't do it in public."
In public, behave. Your fans expect it. You're Andy Hardy. You're the United States. You're the Stars and Stripes. Behave yourself. You're a symbol.
And this exchange is just so fundamental to understanding Rooney's psychological burden. He wasn't just an actor. He was being mandated by the studio to be the living embodiment of American virtue.
Decades later, Rooney actually admitted that Mayer's intervention, as harsh as it was probably necessary. He recognized that the studio needed him to represent something very specific.
And it was during this intense studio environment that his legendary collaboration with Judy Garland really flourished.
They co-starred in so many musicals like Babes in Arms, and their chemistry was it was so
Right.
natural and playful. Audiences adored them together.
The professional bond was profound, but their personal relationship was even deeper. Rooney described it in really powerful terms.
He said their connection was more than a love affair. It was a forever love. He went on to say, Judy, as we speak, has not died. She's always with me in every heartbeat of my body.
It suggests this shared experience, the unique pressures of being a child star at MGM that maybe only the two of them could ever truly understand.
And the praise for his talent during this time, it wasn't just hyperbole. It was a genuine belief among his peers that he was something special.
The director Clarence Brown, who worked with him a lot, he considered Rooney the closest thing to a genius he had ever collaborated with.
He put him right up there next to Charlie Chaplin.
And maybe the most stunning compliment came from the classical actor Laurence Olivier. The source material says he called Rooney the greatest actor of them all.
When the greatest dramatic actor of a generation says that about you, it means more than just popularity. It signifies this transcendent talent.
He wasn't just a popular kid. To many of his peers, he was a creative prodigy who could do absolutely anything that was asked of him.
So the stage was set for a lifetime of stardom. But as we move into the next phase, the narrative just shifts dramatically. The war intervened, and the pressures of aging would cause his career to collapse almost as quickly as it had risen.
That kind of trajectory, peaking so high and so early, it just couldn't be sustained. And the first major interruption was his service in World War II. Rooney was drafted into the U.S. Army in June 1944.
He served for nearly 2 years. But his service wasn't just, on some base in the middle of nowhere. He was a relentless entertainer.
Through the Special Services Jeep shows and the American Forces Network, he performed for over 2 million troops, both in America and across Europe.
It was a demanding assignment and often a very dangerous one.
The source material notes he was awarded the Bronze Star Medal for performing in combat zones.
Which means he was deliberately going into active danger areas, often under fire, just to boost troop morale. That shows an immense personal courage.
But when he was discharged in 1945, Hollywood had changed. And he had changed. He no longer fit the roles that had defined him.
This is the classic, devastating post-war slump that affected so many child stars.
The challenge was twofold. It was both chronological and physical.
He was now too old for the juvenile roles like Andy Hardy that had made him a sensation.
But physically, he struggled to get cast in the typical leading man roles of that era. Post-war Hollywood wanted tall, broad-shouldered GIs, John Wayne, Gregory Peck.
And Rooney was reported to be only 5'1" or 5'2". He just didn't fit the mold anymore.
And that, combined with the fact that audiences were kind of tired of the amiable teenager and wanted more hard-boiled adult drama.
It caused his career to decline immediately and drastically. I think this shift in his financial status is the clearest sign of just how bad it was.
It really puts the scale of the collapse into perspective. You have to contextualize the money here. He went from being one of the highest paid actors in the world.
Commanding, $100,000 per film in the early 40s?
Right, which, adjusted for inflation, would be several $1,000,000 today. He went from that to signing a new deal with MGM for just one film a year at $25,000.
That's a 75% pay cut. It shows just how sharply his star power had been devalued.
And it got worse. The material paints this picture of intense professional humiliation in the early 1950s. By 1950, his fortunes had sunk so low that his only job was touring the southern states.
With the Hedicall Caravan.
Which was essentially a traveling roadshow promoting a patent medicine.
A patent medicine that was later forced off the market because it was basically just a high-alcohol laxative.
So for the guy who was once the top box office star in the world, on the cover of Time magazine, this was a profound, very public humbling.
And this period also includes some of his later, and I think most regrettable, film roles. We have to address his portrayal of Mr. Yunioshi in the 1961 film Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah, this role really stands out as a stark example of a veteran actor trying to find work, trying to adapt, but falling into some really unfortunate stereotyping.
He played the Japanese-American character, Mr. Yunioshi, wearing heavy prosthetics and using these very exaggerated mannerisms.
It was meant to be brief comedic relief in the film, but it has since been widely and rightly criticized as a deeply offensive racist caricature.
And when you examine it, it kind of highlights the blurry moral lines that character actors faced, maybe especially back then, when they were just trying to get a job in a rapidly changing industry.
Rooney did address the criticism later in his life. He stated that he wouldn't have accepted the role if he had known it would offend people.
which doesn't diminish the harmful nature of the portrayal, of course, but it does give some context. Maybe a willingness born out of a desperation for work to take on roles that were questionable even then, just to stay relevant.
And this professional volatility was matched by an incredible amount of personal instability, which led to a catastrophic financial collapse.
Despite earning approximately $12 million over his career, which is just a staggering fortune for that time, hundreds of millions in modern terms.
Multiple divorces, mounting debts. It all led to him filing for bankruptcy in 1962.
And earning that much money and still finding yourself completely broke, that shows more than just bad luck. It shows profound systemic mismanagement.
Which was likely fueled by the gambling habit that would really shadow him for his entire life.
He tried all these different ventures to get back on his feet. There was the Mickey Rooney show in the mid-50s.
Which actually ran for 32 episodes, which isn't bad.
He even tried to start the Mickey Rooney School of Entertainment, a venture that, according to the sources, never actually got off the ground.
He was just constantly running, constantly trying to catch up to the success he'd had 20 years earlier. But that instability, it proved relentless.
But what's so fascinating here is that for most careers, this would be the end of the story. A prolonged slump, financial ruin. It's over.
But for Rooney, this is where his third act begins. He truly earned that title of the comeback king.
He found really fertile ground in the expansion of television. For nearly 6 decades, he worked constantly as this versatile character actor on TV.
He was in everything, from dramatic anthologies like The Twilight Zone to beloved sitcoms, The Golden Girls, The Love Boat, you name it, he was probably on it.
But his most critically acclaimed success in this entire phase of his career, it came from a TV movie in 1981 called Bill.
This was a really challenging title role. He played Bill Sachter, a mentally handicapped man who was trying to live independently after decades in an institution.
So it required a performance that was completely devoid of that hyperactive comedy that had defined his youth. It was a role of profound sensitivity and emotional stillness.
And for this work, he won both a Golden Globe and an Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor.
And this acclaim wasn't just fleeting. The quality of his acting in Bill was specifically and favorably compared in the source material to later Oscar-winning performances.
To actors like Sean Penn, Dustin Hoffman, and Tom Hanks in similar roles.
That comparison is incredibly significant. It tells you that what Rooney delivered in Bill wasn't just a heartfelt performance. It was a landmark piece of sensitive, realistic acting.
It forced critics who had maybe long dismissed him as a novelty act to confront his raw, enduring, dramatic genius, which had been there all along since Boys Town. He even reprised the role in 1983 and got another Emmy nomination.
And parallel to this TV success, a key supporting film role reignited his movie career.
That was when Francis Ford Coppola cast him in 1979 as a crusty old jockey in The Black Stallion.
And the story around this casting really shows his enduring sense of humor about his own long career.
Right. When Coppola offered him the role of a jockey, Rooney joked that he'd never played one before.
Only to immediately catch himself and say, oh wait, actually I've played a jockey at least 3 other times, in films like National Velvet and Thoroughbreds Don't Cry.
And The Black Stallion was a huge success, both critically and commercially. It earned $40 million. And this performance led to newfound recognition for Rooney.
And, incredibly, another Academy Award nomination, this time for Best Supporting Actor.
To receive nominations separated by that many decades, from the late 1930s all the way to 1980, is almost unheard of in Hollywood.
But the true, sustained triumph of this third act, the financial and spiritual renaissance, really, that came on the Broadway stage.
In 1979, he made his Broadway debut in the musical revue Sugar Babies, which was a tribute to the old burlesque era, and he co-starred with Ann Miller.
This show was a monster hit. It gave him the consistent, high-paying work that he desperately needed.
He performed the show 12,008 times in New York, and then followed that with a demanding 5-year tour.
His co-star, Ann Miller, confirmed his relentless professionalism. She said he never missed a performance and was constantly ad-libbing, entertaining the audience.
The film historian Alvin Merrill noted that Rooney, at age 59, was reincarnated as a baggy pants comedian back as a top banana in showbiz.
And the ultimate validation was getting nominations for both a Tony Award and a Drama Desk Award for Best Actor in a Musical.
He literally worked until the final moments of his life. His later film work included the massive 2006 hit Night at the Museum.
And his final appearance, a cameo in the 2014 sequel, Secret of the Tomb, was filmed shortly before he died.
He was 93 years old, relying on a wheelchair, and the director, Sean Levy, said he was just energetic and so pleased to be there.
Just happy to be invited to the party. That enthusiasm, that commitment to the craft, it never wavered, even when his personal circumstances were continuing to unravel behind the scenes.
And that's the other side of the story. The professional narrative of continuous comeback runs parallel to this profoundly tragic personal life, one characterized by deep emotional instability and continuous financial failure.
The source material confirms serious personal struggles. He dealt with bipolar disorder and an addiction to sleeping pills, which he reportedly overcame in the late 1990s.
But that instability, it manifested most publicly in his romantic life.
He was married 8 times, an astonishing number.
His first marriage to the legendary actress Ava Gardner in 1942 lasted only a year. It ended in divorce, partly due to allegations of his infidelity.
And the sheer volume of marriages and divorces made him the subject of relentless jokes by comedians throughout the 60s and 70s.
It was this pattern of trying to find stability and just failing repeatedly. His final marriage, though, to Jan Chamberlain in 1978, it did last longer than the previous 7 combined.
Although even that union had separated by 2012, 2 years before his death.
We have to now turn to a segment of his life that is marked by just profound and devastating tragedy. It involves the death of his 5th wife, Barbara Ann Thomason, who also went by the stage name Carolyn Mitchell.
And this event, it really requires a careful and sensitive tone. We have to focus on the terrible loss that Thomason endured.
Barbara Ann Thomason was a former model and an aspiring actress. She was also the mother of 4 of Rooney's children.
In 1966, while Rooney was working abroad, he was in the Philippines shooting a film called Ambush Bay. And a tragic and violent event occurred at their home in Los Angeles.
Thomason was murdered by her lover, Milos, who was an actor and a friend of Rooney's.
The detectives ruled it a murder-suicide. Milos was found dead beside her, and he had used Rooney's own gun to commit the crime.
The police theory was that Milos had shot her after she attempted to end their affair.
It was just a devastating, irreversible tragedy for Thomason, who was only 29 years old, and it inflicted this immense personal trauma on Rooney and their young children.
The violence and the suddenness of the loss, and the fact that it happened while he was thousands of miles away, clearly added this layer of profound grief and shock to his life.
And the instability just continued in the immediate aftermath. He briefly married Thomason's best friend, Marge Lane, in 1966.
But that union lasted only 100 days, which further illustrates the severe emotional and personal chaos he was navigating in the wake of such a horror.
And despite the professional triumphs of the late 70s and 80s, where he was earning huge sums like $65,000 a week from sugar babies,
Rooney was just never able to maintain financial stability.
the money simply flowed out as fast as it came in. This was largely attributed to what the source material describes as a lifelong gambling habit.
He declared bankruptcy in 1962, but incredibly, he was forced to file a second time in 1996, decades after his supposed comeback.
And the final tragic chapter of his life, it centers on this devastating personal betrayal and the issue of elder abuse.
Beginning around 2011, claims started to surface that he was a victim of financial and physical abuse at the hands of his stepson, Christopher Aber, and others connected to his estranged wife.
Rooney took the incredibly brave step of testifying about this abuse before a special U.S. Senate committee in 2011.
His testimony was just heartbreaking. He spoke of feeling trapped. He explained how his finances were being siphoned away, how he was being subjected to verbal cruelty.
And following his public testimony, all of his finances were permanently transferred to a conservator.
Aber and Rooney's estranged wife, Jan, they denied the allegations, but a confidential settlement was ultimately reached in 2012.
The ultimate devastating consequence of all this, the lifelong financial mismanagement, and then finally the abuse. It was captured in an article by The Hollywood Reporter.
And it described how one of the biggest stars of all time, who had sustained this unparalleled career, was in the end brought down by those closest to him.
The article stated explicitly that he died humiliated and betrayed, nearly broke, and often broken.
And despite the millions he earned across his career, His estate upon his death was valued at a devastatingly small sum.
Only $18,000.
He died owing medical bills and back taxes. And to make it even sadder, his 8 surviving children stated that they were barred from even seeing him in his final years.
It's just an extremely sad final chapter. A harsh and unforgiving end for a figure who had given so much energy and joy to the screen for almost a century.
When you look back across the entire span of his 88 years of activity, the sheer longevity stands as this monumental, unmatched achievement in entertainment.
It's so hard to reconcile the extremes, the fame and the tragedy.
And the fame was absolutely real. His status as a top box office star in the late 1930s is a historical fact. Marlon Brando called him the best actor in films.
Louis B. Mayer saw him as the definitive American boy. The praise was consistently astronomical.
We have to keep returning to the critical assessment of his versatility. That was the core of his professional genius.
The actress Margaret O'Brien said it simply. There was nothing he couldn't do.
And he survived by being able to do everything. Vaudeville, silent films, talkies, musicals, dramas, comedies, television, Broadway. He did it all.
The film historian Janine Basinger, she offered this powerful metaphor to try and encapsulate his unique and often self-destructive career.
She described Rooney's abundant talent as a metaphor for America, a seemingly endless supply of natural resources, which, it turned out, could be ruined by excessive use and abuse, but which he constantly worked to restore through reinvention.
That ability to constantly regenerate his career, despite all the abuse, is what defines him. From child star to character actor, from shorts to Broadway, Rooney proved he could adapt, do it well, and simply never stop performing.
And that remarkable range is crucial. The critic David Thompson cited specific examples of Rooney's immense breadth as a performer. He was capable of portraying characters across the entire emotional spectrum.
And you just think about the variety. He went from the truly inhuman Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream
to the intensely belligerent Whitey Marsh in Boys Town.
And then later in his career, he even tackled roles like the manic, destructive sociopath in Babyface Nelson.
That requires a profound well of dramatic understanding. It's not just a knack for physical comedy.
The Academy recognized this lifetime of professional achievement by granting him the Academy Honorary Award in 1982.
And this wasn't just an award for popularity, it was for what the source material calls his lifetime achievement, acknowledging his ability to contribute meaningfully to the industry across multiple eras and genres.
I think what his entire story ultimately underscores is this heartbreaking paradox that so often accompanies child stardom at the highest level.
That remarkable, undeniable talent does not guarantee stability, either professionally or personally.
For a performer who reached the highest peaks of success and fame, the profound turbulence and personal struggles of life, the marriages, the bankruptcies, the tragedy, can ultimately overshadow even the most celebrated career.
And we've mapped that dual narrative. A child genius anointed as the world's biggest star who was then forced to reinvent himself after the war and physical limitations.
He triumphed on Broadway and television, only to ultimately face financial ruin, personal tragedy, and this devastating betrayal right at the very end of his life.
So as you reflect on this extraordinary decades-long life, maybe consider the immense, almost impossible pressure that was placed on child stars like Mickey Rooney.
They were forced to embody an idealized national image. You're Andy Hardy, you're the United States. And how unattainable it is for that perfect, projected persona to survive intact into a complex, flawed, and turbulent adult reality. Thanks for listening.